The house I grew up in was in Palmer, Massachusetts. I lived there from birth up until I moved out with my current boyfriend at the age of 25. It was haunted by something. To this day, I'm not sure what it was. A family with the last name Robinson. I changed it. That's not their real last name. I just want to protect their privacy. They built it in the 1950s. It's not a very old house at all, but the story goes is that the Robinsons were driving back from a wedding in Connecticut in two separate cars. Mrs. Robinson and Mr. Robinson, they are older. They're like grandparents. So in one car was Mrs. Robinson, the grandmother and the owner of the house, her daughter, a son-in-law, and two grandchildren. The parents of the two grandchildren were driving behind that car. Another car driven by a teenager was playing chicken at an intersection. And if people don't know what that is, that's when you drive through an intersection with your headlights off, which is a very dumb game. The teenager collided and completely just T-boned with Mrs. Robinson's vehicle. Unfortunately, in this car accident, Mrs. Robinson, the son-in-law, one grandchild, they all died in the collision. The daughter and the other grandchild survived that were in that car. And then years earlier, Mr. Robinson, which is Mrs. Robinson's husband, had passed away from leukemia, and I think he had heart problems, according to his surviving daughter. When my parents bought the house in 1990, the Robinsons' daughter told my parents that her dad had a good amount of money hidden in the house, and she said, "Good luck finding it." I guess Mr. Robinson didn't believe in banks, so he stashed his money somewhere in the house. My parents have yet to find it. They still live there currently, and they did a ton of renovations to the house. Like, this house does not even look the same as when they bought it. So that was very surprising that they never came across it. So it must be hidden in there pretty good. We've always had the idea that Mr. Robinson is the one protecting the house that he built and the money he kept in it. We really believe that's who is haunting the property, but who really knows? I was born in 1991, and I think my first encounter happened when I was just an infant in my crib. My mom told me that when I was still in my crib, I would point to things on the other side of my bedroom, which was empty, that whole corner of my bedroom. She said that always freaked her out. Even when my mom was pregnant with me, and my sister was only 5 years old when she was pregnant, she said one time she had to just flee the house and wait outside on the front lawn until my dad got home from work, because I guess one time when she was in the basement doing laundry, she was switching loads over and the washer started itself. Back in the 90s, the washing machines were not the same ones today. You just press a button and go. These washing machines were, you have to push the dial inward, turn it, and you hear that clicking noise to wherever, setting you want to put your washing machine on. And then you have to pull it back out for the cycle to begin, and then you'll hear the water going. My mom said that the washer just started itself. She was moving clothes from the dryer into a basket when this happened, so she freaked out. She just took my sister out on the front lawn and waited until my dad got home because she refused to go back into the house. But things really didn't start ramping up until I was a little bit older, like maybe 13 and older. I could go on all day about the experience I've had, but I will share with you the ones that stick out and still live in my memory with me to this day. We used to have a dog named Bailey, who was this cute little cockapoo with a Cocker Spaniel and Poodle mix, such a cute little dog. But this dog is ruthless, and he has scared off a black bear in our front yard. I think at one point he bit a life insurance salesman at my parents' house before. This little guy didn't mess around. So he knew when the vibes were off. The way the house was set up was when you walk in the front door, the kitchen is immediately to your left and the living room is immediately to your right. If you go through the kitchen to the furthest left point of the house, you'd find the dining room. The whole first floor is really just like a big circle. There were multiple times that we would be sitting in the living room after dinner at night, watching TV, hanging out, and Bailey, our little dog, would stare straight into the kitchen and growl. And the kitchen, if we're in the living room, it was always pitch black. All we could see were lights from the microwave, the oven. That's really the only illumination that would come from the kitchen. Bailey would just be standing in the living room, staring into the kitchen and growling. And the hair on the back of his neck was standing up as if he saw something and he did not like what he saw. So we would always look in there and we would turn on kitchen lights and just go in there and scope it out. And maybe through the kitchen and the dining room, which leads out to a deck, maybe he saw something standing there, or if someone was at the back door, it would always feel like someone was there. But for some reason, only Bailey saw it. Several years later, we got another cockapoo named Riley, and both dogs did the same thing together. When Bailey passed away, Riley also growled into the kitchen on his own as if he saw something. That was always really creepy and very unsettling, especially when you're sitting there home alone and all of a sudden your dogs just start growling into the kitchen and their hair is standing up on the back of their neck. I was alone at night when I was maybe 16 or 17. It was probably around 9 p.m. or so. At that time, my dad had traveled for work weekly. My mom had left a little while prior to this time to go pick him up at the airport. My sister, who is 6 years older than me, was out with her friends or a boyfriend or something. All I knew was I was home alone with both Bailey and Riley, the dogs. And I finished up watching TV downstairs on the first floor, and I was ready to go to bed. I shut off all the lights and the TV, and I double-checked the doors were locked. Being home alone already creeped me out enough that I didn't want to be forgetful and leave things on that make noise and freak myself out even more. And not to mention, we lived in kind of a woodsy area, so just being home alone, just all around, based on the experiences that I've had and the location of the home, it creeped me out. So I shut off all the lights and the TV, double-checked the doors, and I shut everything off. I went upstairs. When I got upstairs to my bedroom with the dogs, Bailey and Riley were just on my bed sitting there. I got in pajamas, I brushed my teeth, and whatever. I was doing whatever I had to do right before bed. I was sitting there in silence, petting the dogs before I was going to crawl into bed. All of a sudden, in pure silence, I heard what sounded like a man and a woman, or maybe a man and a child talking. I knew for sure that one of the voices I heard was a man. The second voice was higher pitched, so I'm not sure if it was a child or a woman. But nonetheless, I heard a full conversation. It was like just two people talking about something, and I could not make out what they were saying. It was muffled because it was coming from downstairs, so I have no idea what they were saying. But it was as if they were just in the kitchen, like just talking to each other, just catching up, or it sounded like a little family downstairs, like a father telling a wife something or a little kid something. It felt like I was interfering in their space, even though this was my home. It just felt so wrong hearing what I was hearing. I froze though. And at this point, I did not know what to do. This was the first time and the only time that I had heard voices. I just stopped petting my dogs. I'm pretty sure I stopped breathing, and even just thinking about it right now, like it just gives me the chills because it was so clear. I could not believe what I was hearing, and I immediately began shaking. I was thinking, okay, what if I thought I turned the TV off downstairs before I came up, but I actually left it on by mistake, and I was hearing a commercial or something? Like it just sounded like someone was playing something on the TV, like that type of conversation. I don't know to this day what overcame me. I know for sure if I were in this situation again, I would hide under the covers and just cry like a little baby. But I don't know what overcame me. I just decided I have got to go downstairs and scope this out. Like I can't be scared and just sit up here. What am I going to do? I'm in a corner of the house upstairs, home alone. My mom is going to the airport to pick up my father. They're not going to be home for a while. So I just felt like I had no choice. I went downstairs very slowly. And mind you, when you go down that staircase from the second floor to the first floor, it is very squeaky. Like you couldn't get away with anything when we were teenagers. Like that is the loudest staircase. Like every step you step on squeaks. So I was going down and each step below my feet were squeaking and squeaking. And I got to the bottom of the stairs and I heard nothing. It was pitch black because, like, I thought in my head rationally, I did turn the TV off. I did turn all the lights off. Like, what I heard is valid, and it's not something that my mind is just playing tricks on me with. But nonetheless, I went around the corner in the dark, and I checked, I don't know if the back door, because like I said earlier, it leads to a deck. Like, maybe my sister was coming home with a friend or something. Nope. I darted back upstairs and I grabbed the phone and I told my mom, like, you need to get home as fast as you can from the airport because I am just terrified. To this day, I just wonder, was it Mr. Robinson and that grandchild that passed away? I walked up those same squeaky stairs to get to my bedroom. At this time, it was not quite bedtime, but I know it was in the evening and we had a full house. My parents and my sister were downstairs and the dogs were with them. I walked up the stairs. I flicked on the hallway light when I got to the top because in that house, I traveled nowhere without lights. It doesn't matter if I was just running somewhere to get something. Like, that house was so scary, so I always had lights on. So I get to the top of the stairs, I flick the light on, and I just pause because something always tells me to just, when I go up the stairs and I get to the very top, it's just like a weird habit for me to look left down to the far end of the hallway towards my sister's room. I don't know why. Probably just because I always felt like I was going to see something, but I just did. I always looked that way. And another weird thing in this house is just that you always feel like someone is watching your every move. Like you were really just never alone. So this time, on this occasion, when I got to the top stair, I flicked the hall light on and I looked left down the hallway in my sister's room. You can see the foot of her bed where she has it positioned in the doorway. The lights are off in there, but what I saw when I stood there and I paused for a minute is the sheet at the foot of my sister's bed was floating like downwards. What I mean is that, you know, when you make your bed and you fluff the sheets out so that they can get flat and you get all the wrinkles out, it was like someone was doing that and the sheet was finally just coming to a rest. I immediately just turned and ran back downstairs, and I couldn't explain what I just saw to everybody, and people just were shocked that I was coming downstairs so out of breath when, you know, it's a full house. You don't expect stuff like this to happen just when the house is so busy. It just caught everyone off guard, and it definitely caught me off guard. One time when I was about 20 or 21, my boyfriend at the time and I were on the couch in the living room, home alone with both dogs, Bailey and Riley. We were watching a movie, and it was broad daylight at this time. It was around the afternoon, maybe around 4 o'clock. And the movie we were watching was an action movie. My parents had surround sound, so it was pretty loud in the living room. My boyfriend at the time never really experienced anything paranormal, so I didn't want to say that he never believed in the paranormal, but I also don't want to say that he did. I know when I would tell him stories, he was very skeptical about it, or he would try to rationalize a lot of things. Until this day, I think it completely changed him forever. This movie was really loud, and all of a sudden, over the loud bangs and all the sounds that come with an action movie, over that movie, we heard those footsteps clear as day walking up the stairs that I mentioned from the first floor that leads to the second floor. Those stairs are squeaky and they make a very distinct noise. So we just heard one foot after another step. My boyfriend paused the movie and we just looked at each other and we both just sat there and listened. I thought maybe my first instinct, okay, is it the dogs? Like I thought maybe the dogs had got up from our laps and they were both going up the stairs or something, but no, they were sitting with us on the couch. And on top of that, I knew in my heart of hearts that they were human footsteps. They weren't little pitter patters of dogs running up the stairs. They were two very loud human steps, just like a normal person would sound walking up the stairs. My boyfriend looked at me. He's like, "Do you want to leave?" And I said, "Yep, sure do." So at that moment, we left and we did not come back until my parents got home later on. And we explained everything that happened. And it was just so surreal. So at this point, things were really just ramping up. I had heard a conversation a couple years earlier, and then I heard footsteps and I see the sheet moving at the foot of the bed. So I was always terrified that I was going to see like an actual apparition, or like in movies when you're sitting in bed and you open your eyes and someone's just standing at the foot of your bed. Up until this point, it was just sounds we heard and voices. That was definitely scary, but this next occasion that happened to my mom it almost caused her to sell the house. I was out and about with that same boyfriend one night. My father, like I said, at this time, he was still traveling for business, so he was gone. It was my mom that was just home alone one night, and any chance I could get, I would be out with that boyfriend, and especially if that meant I could get out of the house. And my dad was gone, like I said, and my mom was home alone, and hindsight's 2020, and I feel bad leaving my mom in the house, knowing all the stuff that happened now. But at this time, all I cared about was going out, and he and I were driving to dinner, and my mom called me frantically and told me, "Can you please come home? I really don't want to be here alone." My parents, they're both Catholic. They put my sister and I in Catholic schools our whole lives. We go to church, all that good stuff. My mom was trying to describe over the phone frantically what happened. I guess above my parents' bedroom door in their room, she wedged a crucifix, and I believe it's still there to this day. She wedged a crucifix, like a cross, that fits in there just right. It sits in between the top trim of the door, and it's wedged into like the ceiling, like that little space between the top of the door and the ceiling. That sits there just right. And like to pull that thing out, like my mom tested it after this, but she really had to try to pull it out to get it unwedged from like its location that it had been in for years. Behind that crucifix, my mom had 2 palm leaves from Palm Sunday that were crisscross. She made it that way just for the simple fact that it looked nice. Cross, and then behind it, she had those 2 palm leaves. It looked really cute. But the time that she called me, I asked what happened, and she told me she was watching TV in the living room alone. She had her bedroom door closed. That bedroom door to my parents' master bedroom is attached to the living room. She had that door closed. She's watching TV by herself, has both dogs. She told me that she heard the back door that leads out to that deck begin to unlock, or at least attempt to. It wasn't unlocking in a typical sense. You put a key in, a keyhole, and unlock it. What they actually had was you enter a PIN, and it's an electric keypad, so you can hear someone entering a PIN. Like, it makes loud beeps, and it would grant you access should you enter the right PIN. She said she heard the buttons being pressed because it was making that beeping noise as if someone was entering a PIN, but obviously no one entered. But about 10 minutes later, she heard a loud bang in her bedroom, but she refused to go check it out alone. She probably was sitting there in shock, did not want to go see what that loud bang was all by herself. She refused to go, and my sister actually ended up coming home later, a little while later, and she described to my sister what she heard. So my sister said, "Let's go check it out." And they entered my mom's bedroom through that connected bathroom to check out what happened. When they opened the door in her bedroom, she saw both palm leaves in the center of her bed and the crucifix that was wedged above her door. It was face down on the floor, like by her door where it was wedged. And my mom couldn't make sense of it because realistically, if the crucifix fell from above her door, then the palm leaves would just fall to the ground too. But they were placed on the center of her bed, which is about 5 feet away, and the crucifix is face down. That was really alarming, especially to my mom as a Catholic. And you hear about all demonic things and presences in homes, and we really thought that was going to be the start of something like that. So that was alarming to us. But my parents even tested it. Once my dad got home from business, they tried to reenact it. And my dad, he's the same way as my boyfriend was at the time. He didn't really want to believe this was happening in his house. We really tried to test things over and over again, especially when it came to this. So they re-wedged it back in the door, put things up, and the way it fell, it didn't make sense. There's no way that those palm leaves would end up on the center of my mom's bed and just where the crucifix landed. None of it made sense. A few years later, in 2013, I had joined the Army National Guard and I went away to basic training in Missouri. I met a girl there who quickly became one of my best friends. Once we graduated, her living situation was not ideal. A year after graduating basic training, I asked my mom, can she please come live with us, at least just for a summer? And she did, and it was a great summer. We made so many memories, but there was one that stuck with me, and I'm so terrified of this happening again because until this happens to you, you don't believe that it's real. My bedroom was that bedroom that was right at the top of the stairs, but because my friend was living with me, I wanted to give her that room, just because the room further down the hallway, which was my sister's room, who had moved out at this point, that one's a little creepier, so I thought I would just take one for the team instead of making a guest in your house move into the creepier bedroom when you know that things happen up there. I moved down there into that room, and her room was my old room at the top of the stairs. I don't remember if she felt any weird energy in the house, but I do remember I let her know of the happenings there, and she was into it, and she loves paranormal things. I feel like until it actually happens to you, everybody does. But I definitely let her know certain things happen here, and just, if you experience something, it's not out of the ordinary. So she's okay. So now that I'm at the far end of the hallway, when you get up the stairs, she's at the room right above the stairs. And so one night, in the middle of the night, I randomly just woke up suddenly and I couldn't get back to sleep right away. Scrolled on my phone a little, sat up in the dark to pet Riley. At this point, Bailey had already passed away, so it was just Riley. He's sitting at the end of my bed like he always does. He always slept with me. So it's pitch black in my room when I wake up. I sit up because I can't go back to sleep. I'm petting Riley. Hi, buddy. Scratching his belly, whatever. And I'm like, okay, I'm getting a little tired. Let me try to lay back down again. I laid back down and stopped petting him. The minute my head hit the pillow again, I felt like I couldn't move. Coupled with that feeling was the feeling of just complete panic, because I could open my eyes and I know I was breathing, but it felt like I was paralyzed. As much as I wanted to move, I just could not. And I was trying, and which you try to move and you feel like you can't move. You're just panicking even more. As time went on, I felt like I was paralyzed for 10 minutes, but I'm sure it was probably more like 1 minute. I was trying to call out my friend's name, and even just to get a word out and make any type of noise at all, I couldn't get anything out. It was terrifying not having control over my own body, and that was the first and only time I've ever felt that. But it was alarming because, like I said, that the thing that happened with my mom earlier on, it's just, you're like, what is actually going on in this house? Is there something more serious than me thinking, it's the guy that built the house that's haunting this house? Is it something more demonic? Or I didn't know. But at that time, I couldn't get my friend's name out. I couldn't scream. I couldn't make a noise. I couldn't move. But eventually it all just stopped. I was eventually able to yell my friend's name, and she came running down the hall. I started crying and I was breathing heavy because it was one of the most terrifying and wild experiences I've ever had. I have never experienced it since then, and I hope I never do again. I go there quite often because it's my parents' house. They still live there. And I still just get a weird feeling in some of the rooms there. It just feels like someone's always watching you. You're never alone. Especially the whole second floor where the 2 bedrooms are. It's just something about them. It's just something is off. And other times when sitting in the living room, all of us had heard my sister's rolling office chair moving like right above us, because her bedroom, when she used to live there, was right above the living room. She did have an office chair and it had wheels, and the noise it made when it moves across the floor was very distinct. So we would hear it moving around when we were all in the living room, and that would happen very often. Something else that would happen several times, which was very scary, is in my parents' bedroom, we could hear when we were sitting in the living room, like just wherever, we heard my father's gun safe. He had a little pistol gun safe by the bedside, and it's another pin activated safe. And you have to enter a pin, and every time you press a number, it would make a beeping noise. If you didn't get the pin right, it would make a noise. Like you would know that you got it wrong because it wouldn't unlock. It wouldn't make the unlocking noise. It would just make a weird noise. We heard my father's gun safe multiple times being manipulated, and it's as if someone's trying to get into the gun safe. That was another alarming thing because obviously those are deadly weapons, and for some reason, something in the house is trying to access them. We were always on the lookout for that. So my parents still experience things now and again. My dad actually, my mom was in Colorado because my sister lives in Colorado, far away from this house now. My father was home alone, and this was just like 2 weeks ago that he religiously, my father is a creature of habit. So when he's getting ready for bed, he takes off his slippers, puts them right next to his bed. And I guess one time in the middle of the night, he woke up to use the restroom. And his slippers that were next to his bed were across the bedroom, just placed in a totally different spot. It's little things like that. And it's not anything alarming anymore. And my parents, for the longest time, thought that whatever was haunting the house was attached to me. And I'm thankful that I don't feel that way anymore because we just bought a new house about 30 minutes away. I feel very comfortable in this house. I don't feel like there's anything bad here. I don't feel like I'm being watched all the time. So there's definitely something in that house, and I can't say who or what it is, but it's definitely still there.